Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to show you how I made this really nice coffee stained bowl. I started out with a piece of poplar and mounted it on the lathe and then started turning it around. It really helps having sharp tools turning this bowl, and it went so quickly. I then moved on to hollowing out the inside of the bowl. In hindsight, I should have left some thicker walls, as this would have made it much easier for the coffee staining, as I did find the bowl had a little bit of a warp to it. Okay, so as you can see, the bowl's coming along nicely. There is a big bit of tear out here, which I don't think is from the tool, because poplar often seems to do this, and my tools were super sharp today. I'm sure we can sand that out. I do love the sanding process, so shouldn't be too much of a hassle. I then sanded it from 120 grit to try and remove this bit of tear out. I'm not really sure what caused this tear out, but in the end I did manage to remove it after quite a lot of sanding. I do really enjoy the sanding process, as it's very satisfying seeing the bowl go from being quite rough to being really smooth and nice to the touch. So I've sanded through 120 grit up to 400, and as you can see I've got a fairly nice finish. There's a tiny bit of tear out here, but that's fine. Alright, so we've got this ramekin in here, and I'm going to apply a bit of coffee powder into it. Just pour, not an exact science, about maybe a bit less than that. We're going to start with that. Right, so we've got some hot water in this spray thing, and we're just going to add a couple of sprays over the coffee powder. Okay, so I think the best way to do this is literally just to apply it with a bit of kitchen towel, but if not, we'll try something different. So a bit of kitchen towel. I think we're just going to paint it on. I know it's going to leave loads of marks, but I'm going to sand this off anyway, so should be fine. Hopefully you can see it applying on. Right, now I'm just going to heat gun that off. So we're just turning the headstock wheel around in order to keep it moving and keep it consistent. At the moment that hasn't really done anything in terms of the colour change, which obviously is to be expected. I suspect we're going to need like 8 coats on this, so after this second coat I will time lapse the process of this. I will sand off some of this to give it a nice smooth finish. I'll only sand with 400 grit though. So at the moment that's looking pretty cool. So we're just going to heat gun this last layer and then I'll time lapse. I then continued this process of applying coffee powder and using a heat gun. It would have been better just to let it dry naturally, as that would have stopped the warp. Alright, so we're sort of getting there. I thought I heard a crack, but I don't think it was. I should have done really thick walls on this bolt, but as usual I go too thin. Don't know what it looks like on the inside. I think it might soak through a bit to the inside. I did say I was going to do the inside, so let's do that as well. Maybe the inside will just have a light sort of application of it. So just going to leave that on there for a couple of minutes. It's looking kind of cool though. Bit of an experimental bowl, but I quite like it. I will, obviously this is going to start to rub in, so I'm just going to go around with my hand now. As you've just seen, I used my gloves to rub the bowl. This made sure the coffee powder soaked into the bowl and gave it a much nicer look. After I'd wiped all of this off and heat gunned it, I applied another layer of coffee powder, just to really bring out that deep brown. For the final layer, I made a batch of coffee powder and water that was really watery, but in hindsight this wasn't the best thing to do, as it did lead to a small bit of warping. Okay, so we're going to spin this, which will hopefully remove most of the coffee. This video is going to be probably about 6 minutes long, and I reckon only 2 minutes of it will be turning. Most of it will be covering this. As you can see, it just slowly brings it off onto the kitchen towel and all over my workbench. It should just start to remove, and I'm just moving it back and forth. Starting to remove the coffee powder. Now I'm applying pressure. I then sanded with 400 grit just to remove any of the roughness left by the coffee powder. I then applied a layer of Woodturner's blend and buffed that off before applying some food safe finish to the inside of the bowl. I then put the bowl into the vise and cut it free from the faceplate section. I then unscrewed the faceplate and sanded with my Bosch sander just to make sure the bowl was nice and flat on the bottom. I then applied one layer of food safe finish to the bottom of the bowl, and that was the whole project finished. Here's some shots of how it turned out. Thanks for watching this video, I really hope you enjoyed it.